The DNA test revealed the truth. My children aren't mine. And now, I've taken away the one thing my wife cherished most. It's strange how a single, seemingly insignificant detail can completely shatter everything you believe to be true. One moment, you're living in a reality you trust, and the next, you're staring at undeniable proof that your entire life has been a lie. If not for a random, almost laughable coincidence, I never would have uncovered the truth. I sometimes wonder, if I had never found out, how much happier would I be? Would ignorance have been a blessing? I've been married to Sophie for nearly 11 years. She's 34, the same age as me, and for the longest time, I thought we had it all figured out. We were the picture-perfect couple, partners in everything, from running our small cafe to raising our 2 sons. Sophie was the face of our business. Customers loved her warm personality, the way she made everyone feel like they belonged. Her name was even in the shop's title. Meanwhile, I handled the financials, kept the books in order, and made the big-picture decisions. It was a good balance. As parents, we had an unspoken system. She was the enforcer, the one who made sure the boys followed the rules. I was the fun dad, the one they could wrestle with and tell their wildest dreams to. Our older son, Noah, was already showing promise as a talented soccer player at just 6 years old, and I couldn't have been prouder. Growing up, I never had the kind of father I wanted, so I made a promise to myself, I would be the dad my children deserved. From the outside looking in, life seemed perfect. We weren't rich, but we had enough. No serious problems. No warning signs. And then, a simple blood test changed everything. I've always been the meticulous one in our relationship. I handle all the details, our taxes, insurance, medical records. I know everything about our kids, including their blood types. I knew that Noah's blood type was A, and our younger son, Liam, had B. Sophie's blood type? UB. Mine? I never thought about it. I had never needed to know. Then, one day, our cafe partnered with a community blood drive as part of a local outreach event. Sophie thought it would be good for business, and I agreed, so we both went to donate. When they asked if we wanted donor cards, Sophie declined, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to have one. I even joked about finally finding out my blood type. A few weeks later, the card arrived. And with it, the first crack in my reality. O positive. I read the card 3 times. That couldn't be right. I knew from basic genetics that a person with O blood cannot biologically father a child with A or B blood. And yet, Noah had A-type blood. Liam had B. A strange, creeping unease settled over me. I told myself I had to be mistaken. Maybe I had remembered Sophie's blood type wrong. Maybe there had been a mix-up at the blood drive. But the more I tried to explain it away, the deeper my unease grew. I spent that entire night researching blood type inheritance. I read medical studies, scientific articles, even biology textbooks. And the conclusion was always the same. If I had O blood, I couldn't have passed on A or B antigens to either of my sons. Which meant they weren't mine. The realization hit like a punch to the gut. I tried to stay logical. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I misunderstood something. But deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to believe it. That night, I lay in bed next to Sophie, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me. I wanted to shake her awake and demand answers. But what would I even say? I needed proof, something indisputable. That's when I realized there was only one way to be sure. I had to get a paternity test. But how could I do it without Sophie finding out? I didn't want to falsely accuse her. Not until I had the results in my hands. After some searching, I found a home paternity test kit that was supposed to be just as accurate as a lab test. The catch? It couldn't be used in court. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about courts or legal battles. I wasn't even thinking about divorce. I just wanted to know the truth. The next day, I picked up 2 test kits from a pharmacy, stuffing them deep into my bag. My hands trembled as I made the purchase, my stomach churning. Because I knew. If the test confirmed my suspicions, my life would never be the same. When I got home, Sophie greeted me with a smile, wrapping her arms around my waist like nothing was wrong. I forced myself to smile back. I felt like a fraud. But deep down, I knew who the real fraud was. I spent the evening acting normal, forcing myself to laugh at dinner, helping Noah with his homework, reading Liam his favorite bedtime story. But my mind was elsewhere. As soon as Sophie left the house that weekend, I grabbed the test kits and went upstairs with the boys. I turned it into a game, telling them we were doing a fun science experiment. They had no idea what I was really doing. I swabbed their cheeks and mine, packed the samples, and mailed them off. Then I waited. Each day that passed was agonizing. I would catch myself studying Sophie's face, wondering what secrets were buried behind that smile. Had she known? Or had she convinced herself that I'd never find out? The results came back 8 days later. My hands shook as I opened the email. I scanned the page, my breath catching in my throat. Noah, 0% probability of paternity. I clicked the second file, praying for a different outcome. Liam, 0% probability of paternity. I had been bracing for this. But nothing could have prepared me for the pain of seeing it in black and white. I had been raising another man's children. And she knew. She had known all along. The woman I had loved for over a decade had been lying to me for years. I wasn't a father. I was just a placeholder. I spent the next few days in a fog. The results replayed in my mind like a broken record. 0% probability of paternity. It didn't matter how many times I read the words. They still felt unreal. I barely slept. I barely ate. Even looking at the boys, the kids I had raised as my own, felt wrong. Not because of them. Because of her. Every moment Sophie smiled at me, every time she kissed my cheek, every innocent, "I love you," felt like a knife in my back. How long had she known? Had she ever planned on telling me? Or was she hoping I'd die and never knowing the truth? I couldn't keep this bottled up forever. I had to confront her. I just didn't know if I was ready for the answer. I chose a quiet evening, after the boys had gone to bed. Sophie was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware that our world was about to crumble. I sat across from her and took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "We need to talk." She looked up, frowning at my serious tone. "What's wrong?" I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. "Read it." She picked it up, scanning the screen. For a moment, her face was blank. Then, she laughed nervously. "A paternity test?" She shook her head, rolling her eyes. "Oh my God, are you serious?" I clenched my jaw. "It says I'm not their father." She pushed the phone back toward me. "Paternity tests can be wrong. False positives happen." I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. 1 false positive is rare. 2. I shook my head. "That's not a mistake, Sophie. That's the truth." Her smile faltered. The color drained from her face. She knew. I saw it right then, the moment she realized she couldn't lie her way out of this. Silence filled the room. Then, after what felt like forever, she whispered, "I'm sorry." That's when it hit me. There was no denial. No anger. No attempts to blame the test or accuse me of being paranoid. Just 2 simple words. "I'm sorry." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I had been holding onto a tiny shred of hope that there was some other explanation. But this? This was an admission of guilt. She sat there, hands trembling, crying, but I felt nothing. "Who?" My voice was flat. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. I slammed my fist on the table, making her jump. "It matters to me." She flinched, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. 3 years, she whispered. "It happened when you were working late all the time. I was lonely, and I made a mistake. But after I got pregnant, I ended it, I swear." I wanted to scream. Instead, I laughed, a cold, bitter laugh. "So, what? That makes it okay? You ended it, so now everything is fine?" She covered her face with her hands. "I didn't mean for this to happen." I stood up, my whole body shaking. "You stole years of my life, Sophie. You let me believe I was their father. You let me love them, knowing damn well they weren't mine. I thought you'd leave if you knew," she whispered. My hands balled into fists. "So instead, you chose to trap me?" She shook her head frantically. No. I didn't, I thought. She was scrambling for words. But it was too late. I had nothing left to say. I turned toward the stairs. Where are you going? She sobbed. To sleep. Her voice cracked. But, we need to talk about this. I looked back at her, and for the first time in 11 years, I felt nothing for the woman sitting in front of me. There's nothing left to talk about. And with that, I walked away. Over the next few days, I barely spoke to Sophie. She knew what was coming. I filed for divorce immediately. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She was shocked when the papers arrived. You're really doing this? She whispered, tears in her eyes. I stared at her blankly. What did you expect? She clutched the papers to her chest. But you love them. I sighed, rubbing my temples. What I feel for them doesn't change what you did. You stole my right to choose. You took away my chance to build a real family, and I will never forgive you for that. She broke down sobbing, begging me to reconsider. But I was done listening to her lies. I met with my lawyer the next day. The biggest issue? The boys. I had no legal rights over them. If I wanted custody, I'd have to fight for it. And I was ready for war. But I also had another target. The business. Sophie might have been the face of it, but I was the one who kept it running. I handled the finances, made the tough decisions. I had invested far more into it than she had. If I couldn't get justice for what she did to me, then I'd make sure she lost everything too. I wasn't walking away from this empty-handed. I was going to take back control. And she was going to suffer. The divorce proceedings were brutal. Sophie fought me at every turn. She tried to play the victim, painting me as a heartless man abandoning his family. She cried in front of the lawyers, begging me to reconsider, saying we could fix things, that I shouldn't punish the boys for her mistakes. But I wasn't the one who broke this family. She was. And I wasn't going to let her guilt-trip me into staying. I wanted custody, but my lawyer made one thing clear: I had no biological claim to them. That didn't mean I wouldn't fight for them. But it did mean the battle would be uphill. As for the business, that was a different story. My lawyer was a shark, and he tore through every financial record, every legal document, every investment I had made over the years. The business wasn't just Sophie's, it was ours. And I had proof. I owned the majority of the shares. I had poured in more money than she ever had. I wasn't walking away from it. She tried to argue that the cafe was her dream, that she had built it from the ground up. But I reminded her of something. So was my family. And she had destroyed that without a second thought. So now, I was going to destroy her dream. After months of court battles, the final ruling came in. I won. Not everything, but enough. I was awarded 55% of the business, a controlling share. I had the power to fire her if I wanted. And believe me, I wanted to. But just owning the business wasn't enough. I didn't want to run it anymore. I wanted to erase it. So, I sold it. Completely. Liquidated everything and walked away. The money? I invested it into something new, something that would provide for the boys without being tied to her betrayal. As for custody? That was more complicated. Since I wasn't their biological father, I had no legal obligation to them. But I had been their father in every way that mattered. I had raised them. Loved them. I didn't want to abandon them, no matter how much their mother had hurt me. So, I fought. And after a long, exhausting legal battle, I won partial custody. I couldn't take them full-time, but I was still in their lives. That was enough for me. Once everything was settled, I cut all contact with Sophie. We only spoke when it concerned the kids. And even then, I kept it strictly business. She tried to get close to me again, calling late at night, bringing up old memories, hinting that we could start over. I ignored every attempt. Until the night she showed up at my house. She was desperate, eyes swollen from crying. I made a mistake, she whispered. Please, let's fix this. I didn't say a word. She took my silence as hope. I'll give you what you want, she said. We can have a real family. I'll have your children this time. I felt sick. She thought that was a solution. That offering me a replacement would erase what she had done. I stared at her for a long moment, then spoke calmly. I already have a family. Her face crumpled. She tried to touch me, but I stepped back. This is the last time we have this conversation, I said. You don't get to rewrite the past. You made your choices. Now you live with them. She left in tears. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Since the divorce, my life has been better than ever. Therapy helped me process the betrayal and anger. I focused on my new business, which has already taken off. Most importantly, I'm still in the boys' lives. They may not be biologically mine, but that doesn't change what we've built together. And as for Sophie? She's struggling. I hear through mutual friends that she regrets everything. But regrets don't change the past. She made her choice. Now, I'm making mine. And I choose to live. Without her. Without the lies. Without the betrayal. And I have never been happier. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched it to the end, don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.